Los Angeles, June 9th, 2025. A city that usually pulses with the glow of Hollywood and the waves of the Pacific has turned into a battlefield. Smoke rises, signs wave, shouts echo. Why? Because Donald Trump, President of the United States, has decided to send 700 Marines and 2,000 National Guardsmen into the streets of America's second largest city, officially to protect federal buildings. But let's be real, who still buys that excuse? Why is a president deploying the military against his own citizens? Who benefits from this military escalation in a city already on edge? And above all, how far will this logic of confrontation take us? What's happening in Los Angeles isn't just a political skirmish, it's an alarm bell, a piercing cry that should wake us all up. So sit down, listen, and dive with me into a crisis that's anything but accidental, a clash where democracy itself is at stake. If you're not yet subscribed to our channel, you're missing out on essential news. To stay informed, you just need to be in the right place. And that place is right here, on the Carlos Lucas channel. So click, subscribe, and stay awake. To understand what's going on, we need to trace it back. It's June 2025, and America is a pressure cooker. Donald Trump, barely back in the White House, has restarted a brutal machine. Mass deportations of undocumented immigrants, a policy that tears families apart and sows fear in communities. In Los Angeles, a sanctuary city and progressive stronghold where diversity is a point of pride, this federal offensive feels like a declaration of war. For 3 days, protests have rocked the city, sometimes violently. Cars burn, Mexican flags rise in defiance, and local police, overwhelmed, struggle to contain a growing public anger that's been simmering for months. It's in this context that Trump makes a move as dramatic as it is provocative, sending 700 Marines, active-duty members of America's most iconic military corps, to join the 2,000 National Guardsmen already deployed. The U.S. Northern Command says it's a mission to help protect federal officials and buildings, but no one's fooled. This isn't a law enforcement operation, it's a show of force, a clear message to a city daring to stand up to the federal government. On the other side, California's Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom isn't backing down. He fires back with rare ferocity, calling the deployment a mad dictator's fantasy on social media. Even better, he files a lawsuit against the Trump administration, accusing it of an illegal takeover of the California National Guard. This standoff isn't just a spat between two politicians, it's a clash between two visions of America. One authoritarian, betting on fear and force, the other calling for resistance against what it sees as an anti-democratic drift. But let's dig deeper, because appearances are deceiving. This military deployment isn't a spontaneous response to a crisis. It's a manufactured crisis, orchestrated, staged. Trump has a long history of these kinds of stunts. Remember, in late January 2025, barely back in power, he ordered the release of billions of gallons of water from reservoirs in California's Central Valley. An absurd move with no practical use that flooded lands without benefiting anyone, but with one sole purpose: to humiliate Gavin Newsom, vilified for his handling of the devastating Los Angeles wildfires. That ecological disaster was just a prelude. Today, sending Marines and National Guardsmen follows the same logic: create a spectacle of power, stoke the specter of chaos to pose as a savior, the federal buildings to protect, a flimsy pretext. The real targets are dissenting voices, sanctuary cities like Los Angeles, local resistance movements that refuse to bow to an inhumane immigration policy. Trump isn't trying to ease tensions, he's inflaming them. It's an old tactic: provoke a crisis, then wield force to solve it. And it works. Images of Marines patrolling Los Angeles streets fire up his base, who see a strong, uncompromising president restoring order. But at what cost? What's happening here is bigger than a local conflict. Trump is testing the limits of his power. By deploying Marines on American soil against protests, he's sending a clear message: the federal government has the final word, and it won't hesitate to use the military to enforce it. This is a slippery slope, and history reminds us of it. In 1992, during the Rodney King riots, the military was deployed in Los Angeles, but the context was different. Widespread urban violence, looting, deaths. Today, the protests, though marked by clashes, are contained. So why such an escalation? Because Trump doesn't just want to repress, he wants to intimidate. He wants to normalize the idea that a president can mobilize the military against his own people, reshaping the rules of democracy. Look elsewhere in the world. In Hungary, Viktor Orbán consolidated power by muzzling the media and criminalizing dissent. In Turkey, Recep Tayyip Erdogan used the military to crush the Gezi Park protests. Trump is following a similar playbook, cloaked in the guise of national security, and Newsom, he's playing a risky but necessary game. By standing up to Trump, by calling out a dictatorial fantasy, he positions himself as a bulwark against authoritarianism. But he's walking a tightrope. Every tweet, every lawsuit, every public statement risks escalating tensions further, turning Los Angeles into a powder keg where one misstep could ignite everything. And you, citizens, residents of Los Angeles, young people dreaming of a fairer future, where do you stand in all this? You're at the heart of this storm, and the consequences hit you directly. In the short term, these 700 Marines and 2,000 National Guardsmen turn your streets into militarized zones. Protests, even peaceful ones, risk being crushed under the weight of boots and rifles. In the medium term, it's your freedom to protest that's at stake. If Trump can send the military to Los Angeles today, what's stopping him from doing it in Chicago, Seattle, or New York tomorrow? In the long term, it's democracy itself that's teetering. Normalizing the use of the military against civilians opens the door to an authoritarian state where dissent becomes a crime. And don't be mistaken, this crisis isn't just about the undocumented immigrants targeted by deportations. It foreshadows a society where fear replaces solidarity, where control stifles freedom. Economically, Los Angeles, already weakened by last year's wildfires, risks seeing its social and commercial fabric fray under military pressure. Small businesses, working-class neighborhoods, immigrant communities that make the city vibrant are the first to pay the price. Geopolitically, this militarization sends a troubling signal to the world. The United States, which claims to be a beacon of democracy, is flirting with practices worthy of authoritarian regimes. And you, the youth who carry the hope of a more inclusive America, it's your future that's being mortgaged. Every Marine in the streets of Los Angeles is a stark reminder that power can choose force over dialogue. But there's more. What makes this crisis so disturbing is the silence of the mainstream media. Too often they stick to relaying official statements, avoiding naming what's really at stake, an attempt to redefine democracy through force. Where are the investigations into Trump's deeper motives? Where are the analyses of the long-term consequences of this militarization? The numbers are clear: 700 Marines, 2,000 National Guardsmen, 3 days of protests. But the behind the scenes? They stay in the shadows. Why so few voices reminding us that Trump, in 2020, threatened to invoke the Insurrection Act to crush Black Lives Matter protests? Why so few comparisons to other countries where military use against civilians marked an authoritarian turn? This media silence is complicit, leaving the field open to Trump's narrative of a strong president facing chaos. But the chaos is his creation, and Newsom, despite his flaws, is right on one point. These Marines, these heroes as he calls them, shouldn't be deployed against their own compatriots to indulge a political whim. So, what does this mean for you, for us, for America? It means we can't just watch anymore. Los Angeles isn't an isolated case, it's a testing ground. What happens there today could become the norm tomorrow. If we let Trump normalize the use of the military, if we let fear dictate the rules, an entire society will tip over. Picture an America where every protest, every dissenting voice is met with tanks and rifles. This isn't science fiction, it's a very real possibility, and you citizens have a role to play. You can say no, you can organize, mobilize, make your voice heard. The people of Los Angeles, with their signs and their courage, are showing the way. Maria, a resident of East LA, told me yesterday, "We just want to live in peace, but we can't accept families being torn apart. And now Marines in our streets, it's like we're at war." This war is one of a power that refuses to listen, that chooses force over dialogue. What's happening in Los Angeles is a test for democracy. Trump, by deploying the military, isn't protecting America, he's fracturing it. This standoff with Newsom reveals a brutal truth. Power feeds on the fear and chaos it creates. Don't be lulled by reassuring speeches or complicit silences. Wake up. Think about what you want for your city, your country, your future. Organize, speak out, act. Because if Los Angeles falls under the yoke of the Marines, if resistance fades, it's all of America that risks sliding into an era where freedom is just a memory. Stay awake and don't let that future happen.